What is up, everybody? VitalSyntax here, and this is going to be a long, full tutorial on how I record my PC gameplay, how I edit it, and how I render it. So, if you're not a PC player, if you're a console player, or if you're just not interested in recording gameplay and rendering it for YouTube, this video is probably not going to interest you. So, you can go ahead and just click away or whatever. But if you are a PC player and you are interested in uploading a video to YouTube, these are my recommended settings for recording, editing, and rendering. Now, this has been in development for about 4 months now. I've tried out tons of different programs, everything from as far as recording, from Bandicam to Dxtory to Fraps to PlayClaw to Xfire, tons and tons of programs, and I've actually spent a lot of money testing out some of these programs. On top of that, I've also tried editing programs, everything from Windows Media Player, iMovie, Final Cut Pro X, Sony Vegas, Adobe Premiere, Adobe After Effects. I've tried basically every single application, and since I've had the opportunity to use all those, I can kind of narrow it down, and I've basically decided on which ones are the best, the ones that work the best, the ones that have the best performance, have the best quality, things like that. So these are my recommended settings and applications to use. And so the very first thing you're going to start out with is what you record with. And by far the best recording software out there is Dxtory. Dxtory runs about $55, I believe, but I've heard, I cannot confirm or deny, that a quick search on Google for Dxtory license file may or may not grant you a download. So regardless, I'm not going to get into any illegal stuff in this video. I'm going to show you guys my settings for Dxtory and how I use it to record gameplay. So under this Ignore tab, you don't want to really have anything set up. You can add applications to the Ignore list and you won't be able to record from those, but obviously I don't really use that. So moving on to the overlay settings, you want the video FPS and the write FPS to show up. Basically, that will give you two different numbers on the top left corner of your screen. One showing what the video on what your game is running at, what frame rate it's running at. On top of it, that'll also show you what the file is being recorded to. So those are both pretty important. So you can see if your recording is dipping a little bit, maybe you need to adjust your settings. If your video is dipping a little bit, maybe you need to adjust your settings. I like to use red. You can actually go in here and change your color as much as you want, but I like the red for recording and green for not recording. Moving on, this is very important. By default, this is going to be a blank screen, but you need to add a location to record to. I have a second internal hard drive. You can see I have the Windows hard drive, which is a 500 gigabyte, 7200 RPM. Transfers about 70 to 80 megabits per second, which isn't super fast. I have another one of those exact hard drives. It's another internal recording HD, and I also have an external hard drive that's 1 terabyte, but quite a bit slower recording. So I like to record to my recording HD and a recording folder. You can also click here and do a test to see what the speed is. I already know my speed is, so I'm just going to go ahead and type it in here for 70. Press enter. You can also actually add add multiple locations you want to record to. So I could record to my Windows hard drive and my hard drive, my recording hard drive, and set it up similar to like a RAID setup. And there's a setting in the video properties or the movie properties where you can actually record what's called a raw cap. And it'll record one frame to one hard drive, the next frame to the other hard drive, back and forth. And then if you do that, you're going to open up this raw cap converter program, add those two files in here, and you're going to have to export, which is going to take a lot longer. And I would only recommend doing that if you have slow hard drives and you're recording really, really high definition gameplay, something like 1080p at 60 frames per second. So I recorded 70 frames, or 720p at 30 frames per second, so 70 megabytes per second is fine on my second internal hard drive. For recording settings, I have those set up just like I do in Fraps. That's fine. Make sure you have these use default settings checked unless you want to have different profiles. You can add profiles, applications, things like that, and you can have individual settings for each program. But if you want to use the same settings for every program, just have the use default settings selected. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. This is the movie settings, or the video settings. So under codecs, you can actually choose Bandicam codec, the Fraps codec, a couple other codecs, and you can actually download things like the FFmpeg codec and use that. You can download any codec you want basically and use it to record, but the Dxtory codec is designed to exactly for what this program does, is record gameplay without putting a hinder on your your game's frames per second. So I would strongly recommend using the Dxtory video codec unless somebody explicitly tells you otherwise that a different one works. And really the only downside of the Dxtory codec is that it has huge file sizes. It's similar to the file size of the Fraps codec, except the Fraps codec records multiple files, each 4 gigabytes, and it'll keep splitting it up, whereas Dxtory just records one large file, which is very useful and helpful. Under the video settings, you can change your quality. I always use the low and compress just to make the file size a tad bit smaller. To be honest, if you're uploading to YouTube, there's no reason to use any of these higher settings because it's going to be compressed so much, because YouTube really rips apart the image quality. Even if you upload a huge 10 gigabyte file, it's only a couple minutes long, by the time it's processed, it's going to be a couple megabytes. So I would suggest using the low and compressed. Frame rate here, some people do recommend using the 29.97, which I don't know why. I guess it's kind of a misconception, because YouTube does support a full 30 frames per second. The 29.97 frames is actually something that used to be implemented with older TVs when they introduced color and things like that. If you want to read up on it, there's probably an article on Wikipedia or something. But 30 frames per second is what you want to use if you're uploading to YouTube. So file output, this is where you can use the this is where you can do direct show, which will allow you to live stream, and you can also do the raw cap here. So if you want to record to a file that you're going to edit, render, and upload to YouTube, you want to have the file output selected. If you're going to be live streaming, you can actually check this and use another program like XSplit, and you can live stream to Justin TV or Twitch TV or something like that. It's actually really easy to set up. And if you guys want to see that in another video, either already just search for YouTube or leave a comment. I probably can make another tutorial video on that. So under file format, I use AVI. If you're going to record to multiple hard drives and do the raw cap thing, and you want to do raw cap, obviously, most people are probably just going to do AVI though. Include mouse cursor, that's kind of up to you. I like having that. Do not select the synchronized video FPS. This is something that Fraps and a couple other programs do by default, and they lock your frame rate into the same frame rate that your video is recorded at, and there's no point in doing that, because why hinder your frames per second while you're playing? It doesn't really make sense. So unless you have some specific reason to turn that on, I would leave it off. Alright, so this is kind of important. So under scaling, it's by default it's going to show up as 100% here, and this is 100% of whatever your frame dimensions you're playing at. So if you're playing at 1080p, it's going to record 1080p. Now, this is why one of the cool features that Fraps has issues with is you can only record full size or half size. But this actually allows you to type in a specific dimension, so 720p, which is 1280 by 720. I can play at 1080p and record at 720, which is a huge benefit because I've never wanted to record 1080p. I mean, the files are like 3 or 4 times as big, takes 3 or 4 times to render. The file sizes are way huger. It takes 3 or 4 times to upload and process, and by the time it's all done and said, there's like 2% of the people out there that actually take advantage of 1080p. So I just do 720p, and I think most people should probably go with that. Alright, so moving on to the audio, I actually have 3 audio devices set up, which is another huge advantage that Dxtory has. And you can actually set up 8 audio devices here. I'll show you that. 8, which is just insane. I don't see why anybody would ever need that many, but I actually use 3, and it's very helpful. So the first one I have set up as my speakers, my headset for my Triton X 720s. PCM codec is the one I suggest. I haven't tried out the other ones, but PCM is probably the best way to go. PCM 44,100 hertz. Don't use 48. I see some people suggest that, but YouTube actually doesn't support that, and if you do upload a 48 hertz video, it's just going to convert back to 41 hertz after it's processed, so you might as well keep it at 44. The second audio device is my microphone. Third audio device is a second speaker, and it's used for recording Skype conversations. So I can actually record it onto a separate audio track and adjust all those volumes post when I'm actually editing the video. So it's really nice. I can be playing the game really loud and not have to worry about my voice volume being too quiet, because actually when I'm editing the video I can change those volumes around a bit. Picture settings for screenshots. I don't take screenshots, but you can mess around with that. Advanced settings. This is one thing I changed. I have a quad-core processor with hyper-threading, so technically someone has an 8 processes. Over here you can see 8 threads or 8 cores. So I do the processing threads up to 2. By default it's at 1. If you have a quad-core, I would probably do 2. If you have an 8-core, maybe 4. I just leave it at 2, but You might be able to tweak with that and get better settings. And that's about it for Dxtory. Those are my settings. And whenever I record a video, let's see, it gets saved to this secondary hard drive. You can see I'm recording some stuff right here. This is actually the video you're watching. And I move those recordings over to an external hard drive for storage purposes, and those files are ginormous. For example, this is a 12.5-minute video, and it's 18 gigabytes. So obviously that's something I can't upload directly to YouTube. On top of that, I won't be able to upload it because it doesn't have commentary or anything like that. So once I have it recorded, I usually title it whatever so I can find it easily, and now I open up and start doing the editing. My personal program for editing is Sony Vegas. I also have used Premiere quite extensively and After Effects, but Premiere seems to work the best. It's more compatible with more codecs. It seems quicker, it seems faster, and one of the things that I heard about Adobe Premiere is it has this GPU acceleration, right? Where you can actually use your graphics card to accelerate things like rendering and live streaming, or not live streaming, but like processing the video so you can play back better. And to be honest, it didn't really increase the capabilities of the program at all, and Sony Vegas seems to work way better for me. It's all about personal preference. I personally don't really like the interface of this program. I like Adobe's a little bit more, but functionality of Sony Vegas is just so much better on my computer. So first thing I'm going to do is just import a clip here. Let's do this one right here, 25 and 6 M4. Just import that, and I'll drag it to my timeline. And you can see I've got the video track and the audio track. I can go ahead and play through it. Jump around. See, it's instantaneous. Whenever I jump to a new spot, it's already playing. Quite nice. And I'm actually even doing it the full resolution. Oops. Full resolution on best quality, so it plays back perfectly. So then I go through and do editing things, maybe change volumes around, add my commentary in, maybe cut out some parts, add some transition, things like that. And I won't go into details about how to do all that, and all that stuff I learned from watching YouTube tutorials. So if you have any questions about how to add transitions, how to record a voiceover, just search those on YouTube, and there's tons of tutorials out there. So this is where it gets really interesting. This is where I talk about my recording or my render settings. So up at File, Render As, this is where it gets interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and say, you can say Save As Type. And there's all these different codecs. You've got FLAC, MP4, MPG, MP3, WAVE, AVI, MP4. There's so many different options, and it might be hard to choose, know which one to choose. What you want to use is main concept avc-/AAC.mp4. This is the codec that YouTube natively uses. And I've tested this out. I've actually uploaded a video to YouTube that was a different codec. Say, for example, a Windows Media codec. And then I've downloaded it through a site like Keep Video. And if you look at the properties of the file I download, they're actually this main concept MP4 codec. So I know for a fact that this is the codec you want to use. So now under templates, there are a couple options. You probably won't have these YouTube options because I added those myself, but you might be on default template. Let's just say you're there. So you want to click Custom. And you want to obviously have Include Video Check, Custom Frame Size, might be one of these other ones, but Custom Frame Size is where you put 720p, so that's 1280 by 720. If you're doing 1080p, then you want to do 1920 by 1280. I wouldn't check Allow Source to adjust frame size. I don't know if it really matter though. Profile, main's fine. Frame rate, I'll set that to 30. You see it's not one of the options you can actually choose from. You have to type it in manually. Allow source to adjust frame rate, I wouldn't select that either. Unless you record it at a different frame rate, which I don't know why you would. Field order, you want to do progressive scan unless you have interlaced video, which I don't see how you would have interlaced video. Pixel aspect ratio, you went 1.0. Alright, now this is where it gets important. This is the bit rate. So variable bit rate means that you have constant bit rate and variable bit rate. Variable bit rate allows the video to adjust itself a tad bit. Constant bit rate, you're going to set it at a set number. It's going to try its best to say that number. Also, 2 passes, it's going to go over the video twice, make sure it's the best quality. So I'll show you what I select for those in a second. Over in audio, you want to set 44 and 128. I see some people suggest something like 192, but once again, I tried this out with YouTube by uploading a high bitrate audio. I uploaded a 192 bitrate, and every time you rip it from YouTube, it's always set back to a default of 151,000 bits per second. So I guess you could set it at 160 and be downgraded a tad bit to 151, but I just always set it at 128. It's not that huge of a difference. Once again, 44 instead of 48 here. Project use same as what you want to probably set this as best for render quality, and you're not using any 3D modes or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel, and I'm going to go to one of my presets. So you can see I have 25 to 40, 35, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, and 80 to 100, and that's actually the different bit rates. So 80,000 or 80 million to 100 million bits per second with 2 pass on is what I like to use. Or 40 to 50 bits per second, so 40 million to 50 million, maximum being 50 million. So let's just do let's do 40 to 50 just for this example. And before I do that, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. This is very important, and one of the most frustrating things about Sony Vegas is resampling. So resampling is basically, it's ghosting, it's blurring, and it can make a video look better, but most of the time it doesn't. So what you want to do is right-click on your video in the timeline and go to Properties and say Disable Resampling. That's very important. It'll make your video look a lot crisper once it's actually rendered. Alright, so now we're going to go back up here, do Render As. I'm going to do that one. And actually, I'm also going to do one more thing here. I'm just going to use these yellow indicators just to render out a small part of the video, because it'll take quite a while to render something like this. Render that small part of the video. I'm going to say render loop region only, which is that yellow area. And click render or save. Go quite quickly. It's not too slow. And I've actually noticed that Sony Vegas is usually better render speed, render timing than Adobe Premiere. I don't know why that is, but even using something like the exact same codec and the exact same bitrate, it seems like Sony Vegas, at least on my computer, renders faster. And really the only thing that's going to speed up your render speed is your processor. If I click here and show you my desktop, you can see the only thing that's really being used by my computer is my processor. My RAM, not really being used. My graphics card, not being used at all. My processor is like 83, 85%. And that's because that's what does all the rendering. Now there are some, I believe there's some like USB type of things you can get for your computer that speed up render times. I know there's some also graphics cards out there made by NVIDIA, like the Quadro series, Quadro 6000, that are thousands and thousands of dollars, that make rendering videos extremely fast, like a couple seconds long. But for most people, really the only thing that you're going to want to do if you want to speed up your render time is to upgrade your processor. And usually when you upgrade your processor, you're obviously going to have to upgrade your motherboard because they're kind of linked together. So let's go ahead and I'll cut this out. Alright, so it's done rendering. It actually did take a little bit longer when I was recording because Fraps, which I'm using to record my screen, does slow down the process a tad bit because it's using the processor as well, but you can see it's 100% complete. I'm going to click close the project, don't really want to save, and I'll go to my location where it rendered, which is right here. You can see the file size is 213 megabits or kilobits, and under the properties you can see under details it's about 40,000 kilobits per second, 29 frames per second, all that other information. So then what I would do from there is just open up YouTube, sign in, go to the upload tab, and upload it. I don't have to show you guys that. You guys know how to do that. So yeah, that's basically how I do everything on YouTube. That's how I record, how I edit, and how I render for YouTube. Hopefully this has been helpful to some people. If you guys have any questions or you guys need any help, feel free to leave a comment. And if you guys enjoyed the video, remember to leave a rating. See you guys in the next one. Peace.